Here's something most people won't tell you directly. We judge books by their covers every single day, and we judge people by their skin just as quickly. It's not political correctness, it's neuroscience. Your brain processes visual information in milliseconds, forming instant assessments before conscious thought even kicks in. And when it comes to tattoos, especially extensive body modifications, those snap judgments carry weight that research is only now beginning to quantify. This isn't about whether tattoos are beautiful or ugly. Art is subjective. This is about compatibility, values alignment, and understanding what psychological research has discovered about behavioral patterns. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. While correlation doesn't equal causation, patterns exist for a reason. Before we proceed, let's establish something critical. Not every person with tattoos fits these patterns. Individual variation exists across all human behavior. However, denying statistical trends because of individual exceptions is intellectually dishonest. Recent studies from Michigan State University and published research in the Journal of Research in Personality reveal that observers form remarkably consistent personality judgments about tattooed individuals, even when those judgments prove inaccurate. The question isn't whether we judge, it's whether those judgments contain any validity worth examining. If you're someone who values emotional stability over volatility, long-term commitment over temporary excitement, and genuine depth over surface-level attraction, understanding these research findings matters. Not because tattoos inherently determine character, but because the motivations behind extensive body modification often correlate with specific psychological patterns that impact relationship dynamics. What follows are evidence-based observations drawn from peer-reviewed psychological research, behavioral studies, and documented patterns in relationship psychology. Some truths are uncomfortable. Some challenges prevailing cultural narratives. But understanding reality as it is, not as we wish it to be, remains the foundation of making informed relationship decisions. But this is just the surface. What comes next reveals the first psychological trap that most men fall into without even realizing it. And once you see it, you can't unseen it. Brutal truth. Number 1, visible history becomes permanent conversation. Every tattoo tells a story, and when you enter a relationship, you inherit those narratives whether you want to or not. That delicate script along her collarbone might commemorate her darkest moment. The dates inked on her wrist could mark relationships that preceded you. The symbolic imagery covering her back might represent a version of herself that still lives beneath the surface. Research on body modification and identity formation shows that tattoos often serve as physical markers of emotional transitions. You're not just dating the person she is today, you're in a relationship with every emotional chapter permanently etched into her skin. The challenge emerges when those chapters haven't closed, when the past remains psychologically present rather than processed and integrated. The research insight. Studies in developmental psychology indicate that individuals who use physical modification to mark emotional transitions may struggle with psychological closure, using external symbols as substitutes for internal emotional processing. Supporting someone's growth is healthy. Competing with unresolved emotional chapters becomes exhausting. The distinction matters, but here's where it gets deeper. These visible stories are just the beginning. What most men don't realize is that behind every tattoo lies a pattern of behavior that will show up in your relationship, whether you're prepared for it or not. And the next truth reveals exactly how this pattern manifests in ways you never expected. Brutal truth number 2, rebellion can be identity, not just phase. Psychological research on body modification reveals a significant correlation between tattoos and nonconformist personality traits. Many individuals seek extensive body art during periods of radical life transition, breakups, career upheavals, family conflicts, identity crises. The tattoo becomes a declaration. I control my narrative. This rebellious autonomy appears attractive initially. Independence registers as strength, and nonconformity can signal confidence. However, attraction to chaos differs fundamentally from healthy independence. When rebellion transforms from temporary response into permanent identity structure, relationship challenges intensify. The research reality. Studies published in Activities Nervosa Superior examining personality correlates found that individuals with multiple tattoos showed elevated scores on sensation-seeking measures and lower scores on impulse control assessments compared to control groups. If her identity centers on resisting structure rather than building stability, you'll find yourself constantly negotiating between her need for spontaneity and your desire for sustainable partnership. She may interpret your preference for planning as controlling, while you experience her spontaneity as destabilizing. This creates perpetual tension where healthy relationship compromise becomes framed as identity suppression. Now pay attention. Because what I'm about to tell you next is something most men only discover after months or even years in the relationship, when it's already too late. This next pattern doesn't just affect your private moments together. It affects every single time you step outside with her, and it creates a dynamic that will test your confidence in ways you never imagined. Brutal truth number 3, attention magnetism demands constant navigation. Extensive, visible body art doesn't fade into backgrounds. It commands attention. This reality extends beyond simple aesthetics into daily relationship dynamics. According to research on social perception and body modification, tattooed individuals, particularly women, receive significantly increased social attention, both positive and negative. Other people look, they comment. Some approach with boldness that disregards relationship boundaries. If you value discretion or prefer relationships without constant external attention, prepare for fundamental incompatibility. The deeper psychological question involves motivation. Michigan State University research found that observers consistently rate individuals with extensive tattoos as higher in extroversion and attention-seeking, though these perceptions don't always align with self-reported personality measures. However, when someone continuously seeks extensive, visible body modification despite knowing it generates constant attention, the behavior itself suggests comfort with, or desire for, perpetual visibility. The compatibility. Question: does she enjoy the spotlight because it affirms her identity, or does she require external validation to maintain self-worth? The former represents personality preference. The latter signals psychological dependency that impacts relationship stability. But the attention she receives from strangers is just the tip of the iceberg. What happens beneath the surface, in her own mind and nervous system, reveals a psychological mechanism that most men completely miss. And this mechanism explains why some relationships feel like you're walking on eggshells, even when everything seems fine on the surface. What comes next will show you the hidden wiring that drives this behavior. Brutal truth number 4, pain processing may indicate emotional pattern recognition. This truth ventures into uncomfortable psychological territory. Research on body modification psychology reveals intriguing patterns regarding pain tolerance, emotional regulation, and relationship dynamics. Physical pain from tattooing is temporary and controllable. Some individuals describe the process as therapeutic, even meditative. However, psychological research suggests that when someone repeatedly seeks experiences that combine pain with personal transformation, it may indicate an unconscious pattern where discomfort becomes associated with growth. The research connection. Studies examining behavioral patterns in individuals with extensive body modification found elevated rates of emotion dysregulation and higher tolerance for psychological distress compared to control groups. This doesn't indicate pathology necessarily, but it does suggest different baseline comfort levels with emotional turbulence. The relationship implication emerges here. If someone's psychological framework associates comfort with boredom and pain with growth, they may unconsciously recreate dramatic relationship dynamics because familiar discomfort feels more real than stable contentment. You might offer emotional stability, genuine partnership, and consistent affection, only to watch her become restless or withdrawn because stability registers as emptiness rather than peace. She may not consciously choose drama, but her nervous system might interpret calm as warning rather than safety. This pattern doesn't make her a bad person. It makes her potentially incompatible with someone seeking stable, drama-free partnership. And here's where most men get completely blindsided. Just when you think you understand her, just when you think you've figured out the pattern, everything shifts. Because what you're dealing with isn't just one person, it's multiple versions of the same person, constantly changing, constantly reinventing. And this next truth shows you why building a future with someone like this feels like building a house on quicksand. Brutal truth number 5, identity fluidity creates moving relationship targets. Psychology research on identity development and body modification reveals interesting patterns regarding self-concept stability. While identity evolution is healthy across the lifespan, perpetual identity reconstruction may indicate underlying self-concept instability. When each new tattoo represents a complete identity reinvention, this month's bohemian aesthetic transforms into next month's biker persona, followed by spiritual seeker, then fitness enthusiast, then activist. You're not witnessing healthy growth. You're observing someone still searching for a core sense of self. The research framework. Developmental psychology distinguishes between identity exploration, healthy, and identity diffusion, problematic. The latter involves chronic inability to commit to consistent values, goals, or self-concept, often manifesting in repeated dramatic external changes that substitute for internal integration. The relationship challenge becomes clear. If you're building a partnership based on shared values and future planning, but her fundamental sense of self remains on shuffle, you're attempting to construct stability on perpetually shifting ground. Her uncertainty about her own identity makes it impossible for you to know who you'll be dating 6 months forward. Neither of you can build toward a shared future when her present sense of self remains undefined. But it doesn't stop there, because even if you could navigate her shifting identity, there's another force at play, one that operates outside your relationship but has the power to destroy it from within. This next truth reveals why the people around her matter just as much as who she is. And once you understand this, you'll start seeing red flags in places you never thought to look. Brutal truth number 6. Social circles reflect and reinforce patterns. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. This psychological principle holds particular weight in relationship evaluation. Research on social influence and behavioral contagion demonstrates that individuals tend to adopt the attitudes, behaviors, and relationship patterns dominant in their close social networks. If someone with extensive body modification consistently surrounds herself with others exhibiting high drama patterns, perpetual relationship instability, or antagonistic attitudes toward romantic partnership, those patterns don't exist in vacuum. They reinforce and normalize specific relationship behaviors. The research evidence. Studies on peer influence and relationship outcomes show that individuals whose close friends exhibit relationship instability are significantly more likely to experience similar patterns in their own partnerships, independent of individual personality factors. Pay attention to her closest relationships. If her inner circle consists of people cycling through dramatic breakups, maintaining toxic dynamics, or expressing cynical attitudes toward committed partnership, recognize those patterns as environmental factors that will impact your relationship regardless of her individual intentions. You're not just dating her. You're entering a social ecosystem that will either support or undermine relationship health. And now we arrive at one of the most dangerous truths. Dangerous because it's invisible until it's too late. What I'm about to reveal next explains why your compliments fall flat, why your affection gets rejected, why no matter how much you give, it never seems like enough. This next pattern creates a psychological prison that traps both of you, and understanding it might be the most important thing you learn today. Brutal truth number 7. Body image complexity often runs deeper. Psychological research on body modification and self-concept reveals complex relationships between tattoos, body image, and self-worth. While some individuals genuinely use body art as authentic self-expression from a foundation of self-acceptance, others use modification as armor against deeper insecurities. The distinction matters profoundly for relationship dynamics. Research published in Journal of Public Health Research found that individuals with body modification sometimes exhibit complex relationships with self-esteem, presenting outward confidence while struggling with internal self-acceptance. The relationship dynamic. When tattoos serve as psychological armor rather than authentic expression, your compliments get rejected. Emotional intimacy triggers withdrawal, and vulnerability becomes threatening rather than bonding. No amount of external affirmation penetrates internal self-rejection. You can offer genuine love, consistent support, and authentic appreciation. Yet if she fundamentally believes she's unworthy, your love won't heal that wound. It can support her healing journey if she actively engages therapeutic work, but you cannot fix what she won't face. This creates painful relationship dynamics where your increasing effort meets her increasing withdrawal, not because you're failing, but because her internal narrative rejects evidence contradicting her negative self-concept. But here's what makes this even more complicated. The same impulsive energy that drives someone to get tattooed on a whim doesn't just stay confined to aesthetic decisions. It bleeds into every area of life. And what comes next reveals how this pattern shows up in the moments that matter most. The moments that determine whether your relationship survives or implodes. Brutal truth number 8. Impulsivity patterns extend beyond aesthetic choices. Research consistently demonstrates correlations between body modifications, particularly extensive tattooing, and elevated impulsivity scores on psychological assessments. A study in Activities Nervosa Superior found that tattooed individuals showed significantly higher sensation-seeking scores and lower impulse control compared to non-tattooed control groups. The relationship relevance becomes clear when examining how impulsivity manifests across life domains. If someone makes permanent aesthetic decisions spontaneously, late-night tattoo sessions, breakup-motivated body modification, or frequent additions with minimal planning, that decision-making pattern likely extends to other areas. The research application. Psychological research on impulsivity shows it functions as a general personality trait rather than domain-specific behavior. High impulsivity in one area predicts elevated impulsivity across multiple life domains. What happens when she feels attraction to someone new? When she feels bored with current circumstances? When emotion spikes override rational consideration? If her behavioral pattern prioritizes immediate emotional satisfaction over long-term consequence evaluation, that pattern will eventually impact your relationship. Spontaneity and impulsivity are not synonyms. Spontaneity involves flexible response within value frameworks. Impulsivity involves action without consideration of consequences. The difference determines relationship sustainability. And speaking of consequences, this next truth reveals a psychological game that you're probably already playing without realizing it. It's a test, a constant, exhausting test that has no right answers, only traps. And once you recognize this pattern, you'll see it everywhere in your interactions. This is where good men lose their sanity trying to win an unwinnable game. Brutal truth number 9, boundary testing may be constant defense mechanism. Psychology research on attachment styles and relationship dynamics reveals that individuals with anxious or avoidant attachment patterns often unconsciously test relationship security through provocative behavior. Body modification can function within this dynamic as perpetual boundary test. When someone repeatedly emphasizes, "If you can't handle my tattoos, you don't deserve me," that statement functions less as empowerment and more as preemptive rejection. Translation: I'm testing whether you'll reject me so I can confirm my belief that people leave. The research framework. Attachment theory. Research demonstrates that individuals with insecure attachment histories frequently engage in relationship testing behaviors that create the very rejection they fear, reinforcing existing negative relationship schemas. If every interaction revolves around her body modification, your supposed judgment of it, your alleged lack of acceptance, your insufficient appreciation, you're not in a relationship. You're navigating an emotionally defensive testing ground where she seeks evidence confirming her expectation of rejection. Compliment her tattoos, and you're accused of superficiality. Ignore them, and you're accused of non-acceptance. Focus on other qualities, and you're accused of avoidance. The game has no winning moves because the purpose isn't connection, it's confirmation of pre-existing beliefs about relationships. But perhaps the cruelest twist of all is what comes next. This next truth explains why even when you do everything right, even when you pass every test, even when you prove your loyalty beyond any reasonable doubt, it still might not matter. Because the walls she's built aren't just defenses, they're fortresses designed to keep everyone out, including you. And this creates an impossible paradox that destroys even the strongest men. Brutal truth. Number 10. Hyper-independence may block partnership. Modern psychology distinguishes between healthy independence, codependency, and hyper-independence. The latter often disguises as strength but actually represents trauma response. Walls built so high that genuine intimacy becomes impossible. Research on attachment and relationship dynamics shows that individuals who experience childhood neglect or inconsistent caregiving sometimes develop hyper-independent patterns as protection. They learn to need no one because needing someone previously meant disappointment or abandonment. The relationship reality. Healthy partnership requires interdependence, mutual support, shared vulnerability, reciprocal care. If someone's identity centers on "I don't need anyone," partnership becomes theoretically impossible. She may want connection while simultaneously maintaining defenses that prevent it. You're not her partner in this dynamic. You're the person she keeps at safe distance while maintaining the appearance of relationship. You can't lead, protect, support, or genuinely connect, because allowing any of those behaviors would require vulnerability she's defended against. When "I don't need no man" becomes identity rather than temporary empowerment statement, recognize it as a barrier to partnership, not badge of strength. And now, and this is the hardest pill to swallow, we arrive at the truth that explains why timing might be your biggest enemy. What I'm about to tell you next is something that will make you question every moment of peace you've experienced with her. Because that peace, it might not be what you think it is. This final psychological pattern reveals why you might be playing a role you never auditioned for, and why the ending might already be written. Conclusion: values alignment determines compatibility. The fundamental question isn't whether tattoos are good or bad. That framework misses the point entirely. The relevant question is whether your values, relationship patterns, and life goals align with the behavioral patterns that correlate with specific body modification choices. Recent research from Michigan State University demonstrates that observers form remarkably consistent personality judgments about tattooed individuals, even when those judgments sometimes prove inaccurate. But the consistency of those judgments suggests that visible patterns exist. Patterns worth understanding when evaluating relationship compatibility. Every person carries history. Some histories appear on skin, others hide deeper. The visibility doesn't determine the impact, the unresolved nature of that history does. If you seek partnership characterized by emotional stability, mutual respect, shared long-term planning, and genuine interdependence, assess whether behavioral patterns align with those goals. Don't confuse physical attraction or temporary chemistry with sustainable compatibility. And most importantly, trust behavioral patterns over stated intentions. People often sincerely believe they want stability while unconsciously recreating familiar chaos. Watch what someone does consistently over time, not what they say they want. Your relationship satisfaction depends not on finding someone perfect, but someone whose imperfections align with what you can accept long-term, and whose values genuinely match your own. This is the moment of truth. You now possess knowledge that most men never acquire until it's cost them years of their life. The research is clear. The patterns are documented. The choice is yours. Will you ignore these truths and hope you're the exception? Or will you use this knowledge to protect your future and build relationships with eyes wide open? Because one thing is certain. Once you see these patterns, you can never unsee them. And that awareness, that's your greatest protection.